Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result, are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. Saying yes to yourself is a graceful unfolding, an intentional becoming of the very best version of you. It is my hope that in these conversations, we are able to find our truth and be inspired and empowered to live our very best lives. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and I look forward to finding a bit of our own story in each other's. Hey, friend, welcome back to the podcast and welcome to the first day of Christmas. So excited. This is such a fun and fabulous time of year for the women who grew up in California with no weather change when the holidays were coming. I am just so delighted to be in Massachusetts where it's freezing cold, just like it should be. And the house is looking beautiful, and there is a song in my heart, and all the things. It's so good. Thanksgiving was amazing. I hope yours was too. Amelia and I are off to see the Nutcracker today, which is our beautiful annual tradition that we've been doing since the first year she came home from China. So since she was 2, we have been doing that, and it's just so fun. And because all of this gorgeousness of the holidays in Massachusetts at the Phineas Wright House, I am so delighted to get to share it with you. So we have Entertaining with Ease. I'm doing 4 workshops in the next 4 weeks, and the first one starts on Sunday. So it is how to host a tree trimming party. So that is Sunday at noon. It's on Zoom. You can do the recipes with me, or you can just hang out with me in the kitchen and then grab the recording from when you're ready to host your tree trimming party. And then the following week, we have on Wednesday holiday food gifts. So I'll be sharing all of my recipes for fabulous gifts that travel so well and are delicious. Then the following Wednesday, we have how to host a cookie exchange, which is super fun. And it's such a good idea for a party because your guests bring all the food and you end up with all of these cookies. And you drink champagne. It's so good. Cookies and champagne. Yes, please. And then the following week will be how to host New Year's Eve party. So I'll be sharing our traditional meal of crab legs and chocolate fondue, as well as some blue cheese souffle recipe, and then all of the elements that make that party and that evening so memorable and so beautiful, full of intention setting and gratitude for the past year and joyful anticipation for the year ahead. So I invite you to come to any or all of those virtual workshops. The link is down in the show notes. It will be so fun, and I'll be delighted to have you in my kitchen. I'm also delighted to share today's guest. We have the amazing Jennifer Kantor, who is my dear friend and my bride from earlier this year. Her wedding was on the shores of Lake Geneva in Aix-en-Yvelines, France. And I had the pleasure of coming out of retirement for her fabulous day. It was so, so fun. But she is more than a bride and more than my friend. Jennifer Kantor is a U.S. licensed clinical social worker with nearly 20 years of experience supporting the mental health and emotional well-being of adolescents and adults in both domestic and international settings. Currently, she works as a social emotional counselor at an international boarding school in Switzerland, where she provides therapeutic support to students navigating academic pressures, identity development, and cross-cultural transitions. Her career has taken her from public schools in Seattle to international school communities in Brazil and Switzerland, and she's had the opportunity to work across a wide range of settings, from classrooms to clinics. Her practice is grounded in trauma informed care, cultural humility, and a deep belief in the power of authentic connection to foster resilience and healing. She holds a master's in international social work and community development from the University of East London and a bachelor's in human services from Western Washington University. I cannot wait to share this uplifting, inspiring, and maybe giving you some good ideas of what your next yes might be in this conversation with my friend, Jen Kantor. Beautiful Jen. I'm so excited to have you here. It is becoming more and more rare that I get the pleasure of interviewing someone that I actually know for longer than the 5 minutes before we hit record. And it's a gift. You're a gift. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
It's really fun because when you are friends with somebody, I guess there's a balance between celebrating with great grandeur how amazing they are, and also balancing that with the familiarity of a friendship, which kind of like, oh, well, yeah, she's fabulous. I'm fabulous. We're together. We are fabulous. And this is just our normal. So, just to catch our listeners up a little bit, I met you a little over a year ago when, oh, actually almost a year ago, at the time of recording, when you came to stay, do a farm stay for a bereavement for your family. And your brother told me, and your parents told me, oh, you're going to love Jen. And of course, I love that pre paving that they did, because when we met, it was as if we've already been friends. We just didn't know it yet. And I love that about us. And I love that about you.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I also felt like, oh, we've known each other before. It's another meeting from a past life, but here we are again.
Right. It's fascinating. And having the pleasure of a year after our initial meeting, then planning your wedding, which was local to you, but completely destination to me, and meeting 50 of your nearest and dearest friends and have that similar kind of deep, instant cosmic connection to people. Like, how do you get anything done during the day when you're just like drawing all of these ridiculously amazing people into your life and having fabulous experiences?
I feel so fortunate. You're so right that the people in my life all just happen to be so magnetic, and not only magnetic and people you can brag about, but also such good friends, like loyal and consistent. And as you saw, so many of the people in my life have been in my life 20 plus years. And that's such a privilege these days to have people around you that have known you since before your brain was fully developed and those kind of things.
Right. And to have people that are, I mean, they have to be equally committed to their own growth and expansion. Otherwise, you are friends 20 years ago, not friends for 20 years.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I do feel that a lot of the people I'm around are constantly evolving and inspiring me to evolve. And I guess it would be hard to be friends with someone who's not.
Well, you're right, especially at this point. Like, I feel like I'm becoming such a selective sifter that I'm use this podcast to vet a lot of my new friends, which is fantastic and amazing because it feels like there's an element of speed dating to it. Just like when someone comes to do a farm stay, I'm like, oh, am I just ironing your sheets and making you breakfast? Or are we sitting in the library for an hour with a cup of coffee and having deep connection? It's just fun.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So back to our regularly scheduled programming. How are you saying yes to yourself in this season?
I know this is your question, and I love this question. And every time I listen to your podcast, I always reflect. Okay,
Hmm.
this is a great question, and how am I saying yes to myself? And I'm sure some of your listeners can relate. As parents, I have a 12-year-old and a 4-year-old, so having a 4-year-old who's only more recently on a more regular kind of sleep schedule. But, it feels like those years when you're in the trenches, when you work full time and you have kids and you have a partner, and how do you say yes to yourself and make time for yourself? So usually when I ask myself the question when I'm listening to your podcast, I'm like, oh, I had an extra dish of tiramisu at dessert. I'm trying
Right.
to find the like what makes me feel like I'm saying yes to myself. But I think two things I can speak to recently. One, as you referenced, you recently joined my wedding and you planned it and you were a guest and it was so amazing to have you there. And being in my mid 40s and never having had a wedding before, I couldn't have imagined how dreamy it would all be. My friends who were there with me were like kind of just in shock and awe, like, this is amazing. On Lake Geneva in France, it
Right.
was such a beautiful.
It could have been at a campsite and be on Lake Geneva in France. It just already is up leveled.
Totally. And so I think I was thinking, in preparation for the podcast, I was thinking there's probably a point in my life, or there was a point in my life when I thought, if I have a wedding, it will be in my friend's backyard because that will be my budget and that will be the wedding and it will be a potluck and love will unite us. And so to go from that sort of budget perspective to something that like was just more magical than I could have dreamed of. Not to say I'm such a big baller, but to say like it was different than what I had imagined.
It was a beautiful, gorgeous buyout of an entire hotel with a multi-course, expertly prepared dinner. The chef made magic on a plate, which I think is the entry form for France, but still, like, it was magical and comfortable and beautiful. It infused everything that you are with everything that you're becoming.
Oh, Wendy,
I didn't know I was going to say that either.
don't tug on my heartstrings.
So, I'm not lying.
You're not lying. Yeah, I felt that way too. I felt like it was some sort of middle ground or bridge. So that is like one way I feel like, okay, I said yes to myself to have this beautiful wedding with my partner and with, everyone I love. And then the other one that just feels more down to earth is like, since I'm having a little bit more time right now because my sister-in-law is in town, and my older daughter is at camp, I've been lifting weights several times a week. And part of that is,
That
and as I was talking about with another friend the other day, like, it's just about, I want to be strong as long as I can be strong. I want to feel great about being able to lift up children or grandchildren or whatever for as long as possible. And so I know that when I make the choice to go lift weights, and luckily for me, there's lots of things I don't enjoy, like I don't enjoy a run, but I do actually really enjoy lifting weights, fortunately. But it's just a way that I feel so good about saying yes to myself because it's yes to future me.
right. And really, both events were right because you could have said, okay, well, we're already legally married. We already have a 4-year-old together. We're already in it. How important is a quote unquote party? Which a lot of people, present company excluded, would call a wedding just a party. So, so you really did allow yourself to have what you want. I think we can argue for our limitations all day long, or we can make a decision and line up with it to have what we want. So you don't have to plead your case to every person that you say that you're planning your wedding to. Like, it's just, oh my gosh, our heads are so not in service to us sometimes as far as keeping us focused on what is. That's what feeling stuck is. It's not even a lack of movement, it's just continuous movement of the same things.
That's the definition of insanity. It's
Right.
doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Right. And again, we can lobby for our limitations. We can say, oh, I want my barn restored, but I'm looking at my bank balance. So how am I allowed to just have whatever I want? And because it doesn't start with have, it starts with be. So when we focus on the women we're becoming and we ask her, okay, future version of me, how exactly did we navigate this barn renovation situation? And let her tell us and trust her because she's us. She's like, it's that gorgeous conversation between our divine intelligence, God in us, calling us to who we're becoming.
It's awesome.
It is. And sometimes lifting weights feel easier than the heavy lift of our aspirational identity. So how does that play out for you? How are you interacting with these thoughts and desires and dreams that you have in your heart and navigating the bridge to get to where you want to be?
That's a great question. I feel that, I'm still figuring out the answer to that on a day-to-day basis. To share a little bit about just sort of my journey, as you know, Wendy, I was a single mom in Seattle. I'm a therapist. I was working in a public school for 10 years. And then a friend of mine, a good friend, said, hey, you don't have to live paycheck to paycheck on a public health, mental health salary. You should consider transitioning to the international school. So I moved to Brazil 7 years ago with my 5-year-old at the time, which I'll say some steps on my journey. But so many things that I've done always do feel like the next best thing, the next right thing, the thing that is the adventurous step that really speaks to who I feel I am in my heart. And I've been very fortunate in my life to have had a lot of travels and lived in different places. So that said, I always imagined I would continue to have a big adventurous life. And then when I became a single mom and I was like, okay, now I need to provide. So this opportunity to take my daughter and give her the opportunity to learn Portuguese and have our bills covered and then some was really amazing.
Totally amazing. And I get like, oh my gosh, that's a giant yes. And I'm sure you were met with some what are you even talking about? That's unsafe, that's dangerous. You got to stay where you know. You're a mother now. You can't just be flitting off all over the world being frivolous and irresponsible. I mean, oh my gosh. Just people projecting their own lack onto your choices. I see you in that, queen, believe me. So how did you, because I want to hear like how this plays out on a continual basis throughout your story. So how did you navigate that initial decision? Was the yes just more compelling than the arguments to stay?
Well, I think, and it could sound dramatic because
Who
probably
cares?
I could have made it in Seattle, but as anyone who lives in a big city knows, if you work, and I was working like in school-based health. So if you work in a school in a city, you can't usually live in that city
Right,
because of the rising cost of housing.
right.
So I certainly had people, and I remember one conversation clearly with someone I didn't really know, an elderly white gentleman who
Who knows everything? Just ask him.
who mansplained to me all the reasons why I shouldn't move to South America, and I because it was so dangerous, and I was
Mm,
like, How many school shootings are happening in Brazil versus the US?
Right.
Do you know? I mean, and it's not to say that there are certainly crime percentages to be mindful of while you're in Brazil,
Sure.
just like when you're in any big city in the US.
Right.
So it was less a matter of how, should I say yes? It was more like I kind of need to.
Sure.
I need to say yes. I need to have an opportunity, and for anybody listening that this is relevant to, like if you transition from working in a school to an international school, typically they provide housing. Typically they provide round trip airfare to your home of record. Typically they provide the best health insurance.
What are we all doing here?
Right. There was just no question of what
I
makes more
love that.
sense.
I love that for you.
It was like, oh, what? I couldn't possibly say no.
I love that. That's how I feel about all my yeses.
Yay. And at that time, I did have some decisions to make because I also got an offer at a job in Lebanon. And so I just weighed a lot of pros and cons and ended up in Brazil. And the challenging part about that, it was having worked as a therapist for 10 years in a clinic, it was a little bit of a different role. But for me, and, I know for you, you've talked about this before. And, I love when you say that you're not available for anything that doesn't delight you, which is not to say necessarily that you love every minute of barn work, or not
Mhm.
to say necessarily that you love every dish you wash, but
Right.
like the end result is
Yes.
what is delightful to you. And, I think if I look at my time in Brazil through that lens, I can really see it like the work itself, which was school counselor, which is very different than therapist, certainly had challenges because it wasn't in my toolkit really of like, oh, you want me to make a schedule for a kid? But I don't even care about that.
Right.
So having to sort of shift my mindset, but all of the other perks and benefits. And then I met my husband in Brazil and I met so many amazing people, and there's amazing things about Brazil. So, and I mean also for my daughter, like she learned Portuguese really quickly. How good for her. How lucky for her to have, already different languages in her brain. So
So amazing.
then after 5 years and going through COVID there in Brazil, and I was so thankful to be where we were during COVID, because even though Brazil as a country suffered greatly through the pandemic, but in my particular location, we were kind of outside all the time, and we lived in sort
Mhm.
of like a jungly place where we had like monkeys and palm trees, and it was
Oh my
super cool.
gosh.
So we could just be outside for much of the time. And because I worked for the school where my daughter went, I wasn't worried about losing my job or being able to pay rent or anything like this. And
Right.
so I was really fortunate when I knew so many people who were in much less privileged positions than me.
I love the beauty and the benefit of reflection and how you knew that it was the right decision for you, but you didn't have this script of, and by the way, you'll meet this fabulous man and you'll have a fabulous child and you'll have this fabulous setup for a global pandemic because you have all the answers all for you, which that's how you made your yes. But that is what that feeling of alignment gives us, the clarity and the confidence that because we're women of faith, because we know that God is in us and calling us to himself at the same time, that we can trust that that clarity that we had in the decision making is not going to lead us somewhere that's going to be a surprise to divine intelligence when we arrive.
Yeah, I totally appreciate you saying that. And I have often felt really, well, again, like I guess fortunate, because I always kind of know what I want to do.
Mhm.
Like so many times I know what I
Gift.
want to do. Like that sounds good to me. And working in the field of mental health and with teenagers and adults, there's just so many times where I'm like, oh, that sucks when you just have no idea
Right.
what speaks to you. It's such a lifelong journey for so many. And for so much of the time, I'm like, well, I know what sounds good to me. I want to do that.
Right. And I want you to continue on your story, but I have a question about that. How are you integrating this certainty that you've practiced? You've exercised that muscle. That's why it comes easily to you because you prioritized it. How is that playing out the more players you add to your entourage?
I mean, I think really that's something that drew me to my husband is when we first met and I said, by the way, I probably won't be in Brazil forever. It's not,
Because he's Brazilian.
he's Brazilian, yes. So in getting to know him, I came to understand that he had also left his home country
Mm.
plenty and had lived outside of his home country often and had done lots of entrepreneurial things in his life. So, um, I thought, let's not date for too long before you know that I might not want to be here for that long. And if we don't see eye to eye on that, that's not going to work. And so what was really awesome is when, it was clear due to many factors that we needed to leave Brazil, he was pretty open. I'm still a little bit more open than him. I was like, let's go to Timbuktu or Mali,
Right.
or, I was like, we could go anywhere. And he's a little bit more reserved and security focused. So
Right.
he just felt like ideally we go somewhere that feels like a safe country, which would especially be a contrast indeed to Brazil, because in Brazil you don't necessarily want to like drive with your windows down, for example.
Okay.
So
Good to
so,
know.
and we had a bulletproof car there, which is also
Oh,
something different
well,
that I never
that's
would have.
different than Seattle, isn't it?
That's very different.
I
And
didn't even know
it
they
is
made those.
it's not even so weird, but of course to me it felt very weird. Like I was
Right.
like, "Oh, to my Beyonce, who cares? Why do I need a
Well,
bulletproof car?"
as a
But
matter of
it's
fact,
something
I am.
they say to you when you are shopping for a car. In the same way, they used to do like with us automatic windows or no. It's like
Right.
bulletproof or not. Like it's one of the normal checklist questions.
Wow.
Yeah, because carjacking is quite common.
Wow.
Um,
Such
so
helpful information.
good
Thank
to
you.
know.
Yeah.
But I will
Wow.
say, of my friends and colleagues who were there, some of them did have experiences with getting robbed, but not everyone did.
Mhm. Right.
Um, so when I said to my husband, like, okay, I think it's time to find a different school or a different setup for us, and he was pretty open and pretty excited and very supportive.
That's awesome.
So I went to a job fair and got another job at a school in Switzerland where I currently am located. And it's again, I mean, similar to what we were just discussing, but this whole idea of, is every minute of my day full of delight? I mean, depends on the day, but
Sure.
the end goal,
Yeah.
so there's so much delight in when I wake up and see my view, and there's
Right.
so
You
much
live in a Ricola commercial.
I do.
Like I kept telling myself, this is not a green screen. This is not a movie set. It actually is the Swiss Alps. It's so stunning.
It's so stunning. It's so stunning. And for my kids to now, like now the both of them have French, so they'll have English, Portuguese, and French. And it's wonderful. I mean, there's so many good things about it. And what also feels really like I feel so fortunate about is I actually the job I'm doing really is the job for me. Again, like any challenges are just that. They're just challenges. And I don't know if you listen to a podcast or if you're familiar with Edith Eger, who's
Oh my gosh. I've only listened to her on Kathy Heller's podcast, but my one takeaway that I heard her say this maybe 4 or 5 years ago, what you get out of your body can't make you sick. And here, right here, my worry journal that just says, just getting it out of my body. That's what it goes right into that journal. She's phenomenal. And besides dropping truth bombs, a survivor of a concentration camp. And like, didn't she become or write a book or become a therapist like in her 70s or 80s or something insane like that?
well, I don't know how old she was, but I do know that she's now a very famous psychologist. Um, So
Who
her
was
truth
not
bomb,
young.
no, yeah, now she's 100 or 99, but
Yeah.
her truth bomb that I have really held on to, especially in light of her life, is like, there are no problems, there are just challenges. And, talking about how as she moved on in her life, she realized it wasn't Nazis actively holding her back. It was the Nazis in her mind that she was letting actively
Mm.
hold her back.
Right. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional.
Yes, queen. So yeah, so I think about that all the time, which,
Yeah.
and my life actually, I would say overall in the big scheme of things, there's not so many grand challenges. I'm like have food and water every day. I have a place to live. I'm in a very safe country.
You
Um,
have food that somebody else prepares for you.
that's
So
right. That's another
dreamy.
perk of the boarding school is I don't have to cook.
Someone is sectioning your grapefruit. I was talking to Tara about that when we were having breakfast. If I just had someone that sectioned my grapefruit, I would have so much more time in my day. So
This is the thing.
beautiful.
Yeah, I mean it's very dreamy in a lot of ways. So to answer your question about like, as my entourage has grown and now we're here, and I guess it's not that I don't still have like a big spirit of adventure. I feel that I do, but I also think, especially for many reasons, politically, etc., I'm like, want to stay here.
Right?
This is where I want to stay.
Yeah.
And I want to operate from here and do big things from here. And also just not to say that these kind of experiences aren't really great for kids, but I will say, having had the privilege of being a therapist for so many kids over the years who are like, I'm just so tired of moving and starting over. Like
Mm.
it's hard for them. So for my now 12-year-old, she left Seattle at 5 to Brazil. She left Brazil at 10 to Switzerland. She would love to stay put for a little while.
Mm.
I get that. And
Right.
she's having such a different experience of life than me,
Right.
which is cool. And she paid, I don't know if I mentioned that to you, she paid me a little compliment, which made my day. Oh, I think I did mention to you, but when I was saying, like, Colette, your life is so different than mine. And, you've tried lingual, you've just traveled around the world. It's so cool. And she was like, well, that's because I have an adventurous mom.
I love that. It never gets old. I just think it's so beautiful. We're comparing our daughter's experiences to our experiences, right? And there's a skipped generation in that, and that is how we are. So I think it's really beautiful that you have the skills and that I have the access to you and your skills to really understand and conceptualize their experience compared to their experience, where I'm can be less available for complaining because I'm comparing it to what I never had the opportunity to do when I was a kid. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, oh, you have to go to France again. It's so you tell your therapist about how terrible it was that I took you to France for a month at a time and whatever.
Yeah.
So, I think it's really beautiful that you are leaning into what feels good to you and you are aware in a healthy, knowledgeable way of what your role is in navigating the experience of your daughters. Good job.
Thanks. Thanks,
You're
Mama.
welcome. You're welcome. I see you. I also love this satisfaction with what is and eagerness for more because I believe that more is the mantra of the universe. And I think both of us were raised, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe we were raised to look around and say, why can't you just be happy with what you have? And I think there's a preconceived notion there that the desire for more is a result of dissatisfaction. And that's not what it is. It's like, okay, you have this beautiful experience. you have this gorgeous view of Switzerland. You had a phenomenal experience in Brazil. And instead of keeping that to yourself and your family or sharing it on a podcast, you have a desire to help other people that want to know how to do this. You want to show them how to do this. And I love that you're open to not only serving your employer, but you also have more to give. And because you've done it, that social street cred is there. And now you are a curator of this information of how to become an employee of an international school and how to get this situation and what paperwork you need, like the nuts and bolts, but also you have the ability to pass on these amazing tools as well as your experience to help usher somebody else into their next fabulous international yes.
Yeah, I do have those tools and that desire to
Yeah.
support people on their journey. And certainly when I started out working as a therapist in a school, I really didn't know that it was possible to transition to like international schools doing similar work. And so it's just been such a cool journey. I do think, you mentioned like childhood and the conditioning of like, this is fine, this is
Mhm.
enough. Something that I feel, again, I feel fortunate, like my parents who were, kind of hippies of the 70s, and lived in Austria for the majority of the 70s. And then throughout their life as musicians, I never saw them working for the man.
So
Like,
good.
like I always saw them, you know, my mom more than my dad, but hustling, music, gigs, symphonies, orchestras, quartets, you name it, because music really guided them.
Yeah.
And I would say music has been their guide in their
Yeah.
life. While they might have had a more traditional employer here or there, like teaching music out of school or this and that, but by and large, self-employed musicians. And I think, for my brother and I both, that really impacted our view on what life could or should look like. Well, you don't have to, work for the same employer for 40 years and, you know,
Right.
do your time clock punch in and, whatever the case is. It always seemed to me like, oh, why would I choose a boring path if I don't have to, you know, they,
Right.
they didn't, they kind of did what they liked. And, um, even though it was, it wasn't always the most lucrative, especially when we were just kids and they were just starting out. But
Right.
but over time, their choices, I feel, had a positive impact on my brother and I, just to see like, oh, life can be so much more interesting than just working at the company.
Right. And I think that's so fascinating because I see that in your experience and I see that in knowing them. And it's also very fascinating to me because in conversations that I've had with both you and your brother, and I'm an idea factory, like, oh my gosh, you could do this, you could do that, you could do this. And there seems to be some resistance to really do people really want that? Is that really in service? Is that and so it's so fascinating that even when you grow up in an entrepreneurial house, there's still like maybe it's witnessing that scrappiness or I don't know. It's really interesting. What do you think that's about?
I mean, my first thought is, what, whether by parents or societally, like obviously there's societal conditioning.
Totally.
And I will say that even though my parents made some of these outside of the box choices, we definitely had other relatives
Sure.
who, were like, wait a minute, that's
Right.
not lucrative, or well, you're going to do that, and that's not going to support your family. And what are you talking about? And,
Yeah.
these conversations that I would have with my late
Right.
grandfather, who would be like, wait, what are you going to study? But there's no money in that. And I'd be like, okay, well, you don't have to do that then.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
then you don't have to sign up for it. Um, But, because I think
Huh.
obviously it's out of the the feeling of wanting to provide and what if I can't, and feeling
Mhm.
like I think that can happen to all of us where like the what
Totally.
ifs of, well, I could do this big entrepreneurial leap, but then what if my kids don't have health insurance? Those
Right.
things that come up of if you might know another story of someone who's done this or that and been then in a precarious position. But yeah, I definitely know that I still have some resistance, even if it's less than the average Joe or
Right.
Sally. Like it's still some resistance because this thinking that's required, which is
Yeah.
magical thinking.
Right.
It's hard to get into that magical zone that you have
Mhm.
to be there
Right.
to envision what could be next. And as I was saying about my husband, like he's done some really entrepreneurial things,
Yeah.
and so he's more into like envisioning what a leap could look like. He has more faith in that.
Sure.
Um, and I'm not quite at the same place as him yet. But I will say it's easy for me when I'm like, here's the thing I want to do, and then I envision it, and then I'm like, that totally can happen. And then it happens. But I maybe we all at different points in our life, certainly there was a time, and in hindsight, I'm like, everything's worked out. It's all good.
Right?
I'm glad those things didn't go the way they should.
Yeah.
But there were some years there where I was really wanting to work because my background, it's largely in mental health, but like also aid work was where I wanted to be, and like international social work and working with Doctors Without Borders or International Committee of the Red Cross. And I was just getting shot down. I was getting shot down. And I was like, what? But I have this experience, and I think I should be a great candidate. And so then when there was an opportunity to do something short term, because Doctors Without Borders said, do something else and come back and reapply, which is what I did. And so this time frame when I went somewhere else and I did some work in South Africa for a while, and that was the time when I returned from South Africa that I realized that I was pregnant and I was going to be a mom. And so then my trajectory, just changed. And I thought, okay, well, this minute I am not going to, I'm
Right.
not going to any more zones. Um,
Right.
and everything's going to have to shift for now. And my
Right.
focus will need to be on providing for this little person. But when I think, obviously the trajectory just is what it is, and I feel like my life has been very beautiful in all the
Yeah.
ways it's unfolded.
Well, right. I mean, even the things that we were talking about when we were together of providing wellness opportunities for aid workers. It's like you have a heart for it. So that's why I love, of course, we could talk about everything that's becoming, but I love the reflection points because what these stories remind us of is, oh, that's right. Everything does work out. Huh. That's so interesting that I am concerned that I'm not going to be able to do this thing I really want when I have no evidence of things not working out for me. I only have proof that it works out. So it's such a beautiful practice and reflection when we do look back and we see, oh, and then I could do this, which hosting a retreat that is a respite for aid workers sounds a lot more enjoyable than being an aid worker in desperate need of respite.
It does, especially at this age.
Exactly. And of course, everything is always working out for you.
Hmm.
And when we can remind ourselves of that, I mean, I had a conversation with my coach 3 minutes before I got on this call with you of how do I balance my desires for what's coming with my awareness and attention to what is. I feel like I have my foot on the gas and my foot on the brake at the same time. And someone that listens to this podcast might think that I never feel like that, but I always feel like that, just not about the same thing. because it's always the next thing.
I'm so curious what your coach said in
I
response to
am going to tell you because, of course, I screenshotted it because it was like, oh my gosh. And I love that she started. I know you already know this, but because, of course, like while I'm saying it to her, I'm coaching myself through the response because I also don't want her to think that I haven't been a good student, right? Because
God
I'm a good
forbid.
girl, right? Okay. So she said, the tug of war between allowing the good that's coming and being pulled back by what was. But here's the thing, what we call reality is often just the past crystallized. The physical world is old light, a delayed echo of former consciousness. When you keep staring at what is, you're really just bonding with what was. And that's often rooted in loyalty, guilt, and the old identity you're afraid to outgrow. It's an addiction to the upper limit, a fear that if you rise, you'll leave people behind, a belief that receiving more means betraying the version of you who struggled. But none of that is true. So become the frequency of what you desire before it shows up. That's how you collapse time. That's how you become a vessel for new light. Kabbalistically, when you embody the future in the present, the field rearranges itself to mirror you. You are not here to stay small out of obligation. You are here to overflow. And the moment you allow it, you become the portal God has been waiting to pour through. Mic drop. And I can't
Mic
believe
drop.
I didn't cry the whole time I read that.
That's really good.
I loved what she said about the belief that receiving more means betraying the version of you who struggled.
Yeah, that really resonates. That really resonates.
It's big work, Queen, but
It's
I'm
big
here
work.
for it.
Yes, I mean, I think what's coming up for me, I know we just have a few minutes left.
No,
I
no,
think
no, go.
what's coming up for me is, and it's a struggle of my everyday life forever, where I want to enjoy something, but if I know where it came from or how it happened, or I know, that maybe there was conflict minerals used in this car that I drive, or, these kind of ethical considerations, or, oh, you look so great in your new clothes, but who made them? Like, were they made ethically, and will the clothing harm the environment? And when you wash it, will it go into the oceans and kill the fish? Like, there's so many ethical considerations that it's hard for me to sort of parse out, if you can use those words, but like,
That sounds very heavy.
it's heavy. I'm over here living in abundance, but what does that abundance mean? Or was it on the backs of someone else? For example, I have an auntie who lives in Dubai, and we visited her there, and it's lovely to visit her. And she is just aging goals. Like, she's in her 80s and she lifts weights every day, and she goes swimming in the ocean every day. She practices the piano every day. She still travels playing bridge. Um, she's amazing. And when you visit Dubai and you see all the beautiful, flashy buildings, and you're like, these were made by slaves yesterday who didn't even have air conditioning. So
Right.
it's just my constant battle ethically of,
Mm,
I want to, and it's easy, it's clear cut when it's the Alps, when you just look out at the mountains and then you're like, the Alps, they didn't hurt anybody. Like, or
right?
maybe there was an avalanche here or there, but versus sort of the luxuries in life, quote unquote, that we might see as the luxuries. And what's so important for me, and I think, I think about it a lot, and I try to make ethical decisions about like
Mhm.
the food I eat and those kind of things, but it takes so much space in my brain. It
Mm,
takes up so much space in my brain all the time of like, look at this cool thing. Or I got my daughter like a watch that she can text on, not a kind of basic smartwatch, but the
right.
plastic in the wristband is messing with her endocrine system.
Mm,
Like, it's so, the more the more you just want to put your head in the sand, because you're like, how can I totally appreciate and live in this beautiful abundance,
right.
while at the same time being mindful of like, Starbucks is funding a genocide. Like Amazon and Microsoft, are funding those weapons? And how do I make ethical and conscientious choices while being a light in the world, like to be a light in the world?
That, yeah. It's like, and sorry, listeners, a question that will never be answered. Um, wow. Okay. So I have so much to say, and I'm just going to say what I know.
Okay.
I can't suffer enough to make suffering people prosperous. I can't be poor enough to make poor people abundant. I can't be sick enough to make sick people well. So, like you, I want to make informed decisions and know that my responsibility, unless I'm called to more, my responsibility is to make informed decisions,
Uh-huh.
not to pretend nothing bad is happening, but to confirm that those things that are happening, it's Marianne Williamson refers to it in A Course in Miracles. Not she's not the author of A Course in Miracles, but she is a teacher of that book. She says it's a positive denial. You're not denying that it's happening, but you are denying that it has power over you and your work as a light worker, as a miracle worker, as a bringer of love. So our focus on all the bad in the world, as if those conditions have to be a certain way before I can be happy or be in service or be in contribution, we'll never do what we're here to do. So, yes, be aware and ask, what is my role in this today? And is my role to shed light or be a part of the solution? Because I'm sure my role is not to spin and be in this really dark place of I can't even do my own laundry because this detergent is doing this, or I can't wear, my wedding ring. It has a certificate. It's not a blood diamond, but I can also write on a piece of paper. So, like, I mean, we just don't know. So, what I'm saying is there's so much that we don't know. And so when we spend our time trying to figure out those things, we are keeping us from what we do know. And our focus on what we do know and what we're asking all the time, how may I be of service? Where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say? And to whom would you have me say it? And that practice every day, sometimes every hour, sometimes every 15 minutes, has me personally in alignment so that I am staying in my lane and being in the contribution that I'm meant to be in. And then with my wealth, with your wealth, with us not, I want to use my privilege as a white woman born in America. I want to use that privilege well. I want to have positive impact. I can't be quiet until everybody else gets a voice. That's not in service. So I want to use my my round this time. Well, and I believe that that's true for you as well.
That is certainly true.
That's why we love each other. Oh
That's
my
why we
gosh.
love each other.
Okay, every conversation with you is too short. So I'm so sorry that we have to end it here, but I have loved this time with you as always. Please tell everyone where they can find and follow you. I know your playground is LinkedIn. Is that true? Okay,
At the moment, yes.
perfect. Share all that goodness.
I think you can just find me under Jennifer Kantor.
Perfect.
And yeah, I'm in Switzerland. Um, And I hope soon, as you kind of touched on it, I hope soon to be sort of expanding some of the services that I provide, from coaching to therapy for expats and things like this. So
all of that minus the hope to and soon. By the time this airs, that link will be in the show notes. If you're interested in how you can teach at an international school, you can get Jen's fabulous information, and she'll happily provide that for you.
thank you so much, Wendy. And I look forward to talking to you soon.
Can't wait. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site, or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at Phineas Wrighthouse and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week.